Carolina Santos really copped it on the recent MAFS season after she went behind husband Dion Giannarelli's back to hook up with Daniel Holmes, another groom from the experiment. But new leaked phone calls, with what appears to be producers, show that she was hoping to be upfront with Dion that whole time. Yikes. Carolina shared a series of audio recordings to her Instagram stories over the last 24 hours which she claims are conversations she had with unnamed producers from the production company behind MAFS, and Emulshine. She also gave an explanation as to why she's coming forward with this information over 4 months after the show has finished. She explained that even though MAFS has finished airing and is fading in Australia, it's consistently airing in new countries like the US and the UK. "We get new hate all over again," Carolina explained, saying that it's been affecting her for a really long time. "I feel like I've been taking the blame for something I did not do. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to be honest. I just wasn't allowed to." In the initial audio recording she shared, Carolina wrote, "I've been quiet for a long time, but for my health and well-being I don't want to keep this in any longer. I tried with multiple producers prior to this conversation with one of the head producers about wanting to be upfront and honest with Dion and asking to deal with the situation as I would on the outside. As you can hear, if it was up to me things would not have been done the way it did. I'm glad I'm finally sharing my truth." In the recording, the person, who appears to be a producer, asks Carolina if she is basing her request, which seems to be her desire to tell Dion, on what happened during Jessica Power's series. On that MAFS season, Jessica cheated on her TV husband Mick Gould with another MAFS husband, Dan Webb. After revealing their affair, Jessica and Dan were allowed to stay on the show as a new couple. She had someone to even talk about it with, Carolina responded to the producer. "I literally have to keep it to myself the whole entire time. We're not allowed to speak to people outside of the experiment. I'm not allowed to speak to people in the experiment," Carolina continued. "I literally have no one to even say, 'Hey, this is what's happening, what do you think? Like, what advice do you give me?'" She told the person in the recording it was really frustrating. "On top of that, there's obviously Dion. That's not how the way I would have handled things on the outside." She said that on the Voxy interview after Daniel had invited her for a chat, producers asked her if she was doing to tell Dion. "I'm like, yeah," and they're like, "No, you don't want to tell Dion," Carolina claimed in her Instagram story. "And I'm like, oh, okay, well I won't tell him then." While it's not clear when this conversation is from, the recording goes on with Carolina saying, "I want to tell him now. How long more am I going to drag this along for?" Carolina goes on to say that it's not reality TV if it's not showing what she would really do in real life. She then says that if they're going to go against what she would do in reality, then to run it past her so she can prepare for the hate that comes her way. Carolina claimed measures were taken so she couldn't tell Dion, aside from the phone conversations and producer interviews. She says that Dion had moved out of their apartment after sharing it with her for just 4 days. She didn't know what apartment he moved to and claimed she wasn't allowed to go knock on everyone's doors whenever we want to, as there was someone in the corridors making sure they wouldn't interact with other cast without cameras and production approval. That must have been what Dom got when she visited Olivia, I guess. But that's irrelevant. I wasn't allowed to tell him, even if I wanted to, Carolina said. In another phone recording, Carolina tells another person who appears to be a MAFS producer that she would like to not blind Dion completely. "I would like to invite him over or go over to his place. Just say like, 'Look, I'm really sorry, but I knew from the get-go that you weren't really for me and this kind of happened and I see a chance of finding love there and that's why I came here, so I'm going for it," Carolina explained. "I would like to tell him one-on-one and I would actually love if that happened today." In this recording, the person says it's not up to him. Obviously irritated, Carolina responded that she'd been bringing it up for over a week. In case you missed it, Dion was completely blindsided by the revelation at a commitment ceremony, where Daniel and Carolina walked in hand. Fucking hell. Carolina and Daniel continued dating after they left the experiment but last month announced they had split up. While the first lot of audio recordings will expire from Carolina's Instagram stories soon, you can listen to the tea via So Dramatic here. I, like a lot of viewers around Australia, had some opinions of Carolina during MAFS. Some were related to the way she handled the love triangle situation, if you can even call it that, and some were not related to that at all. One of the biggest gripes during the whole debacle surrounded the fact that Carolina had been cheated on by an ex in her past, and that it appeared she was doing the same thing to Dion behind his back. But this really sheds some light on it all, doesn't it? With the new MAFS season on its way, I'll definitely be questioning what goes down next time around.